High Executor Xyrith Malveron stood before the massive observation window of his flagship, the Eternal Mandate. Behind him, holographic displays showed the positions of 9,900 battlecruisers. Each ship was a mountain of metal and death, carrying enough firepower to burn continents. Together, they formed the largest invasion fleet in 12,000 years of Dominion history. And all of it was aimed at one small blue planet called Earth. Xyrith was old by Velthari standards. His gray skin had darkened with age, and his 4 eyes had seen the fall of empires. He had conquered 37 worlds himself. He knew how this would end. Every species reacted the same way when the Dominion arrived. First came denial, then fear, then surrender. The pattern never changed. "High Executor," said his aide, a young officer named Valeth, "the Grand Calculus has completed its analysis of the target species." Xyrith turned slowly. "And humans, carbon-based. Average lifespan of 80 years. They have achieved basic interstellar travel, but possess no unified government. They spend significant resources fighting among themselves." Valeth paused. "The calculus estimates conquest probability at 99.97%. What of their military capability? Primitive. Their most advanced weapons could perhaps destroy one of our smaller vessels. They have no planetary shields, no antimatter weapons, no artificial intelligence networks." Valeth looked up from her report. "Standard protocol recommends 200 battlecruisers for a species at this development level." Xyrith smiled, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. "And I have brought 9,900. May I ask why, High Executor?" "Because the Dominion grows soft, young one. Our last 3 conquests took too long. Other species watch us. They remember when the Dominion was feared." He turned back to the window. "This world will be an example. We will crush them so completely that no species will dare resist us for 1,000 years. 8 months. That was how long it took for the Dominion fleet to cross the void between stars. 8 months of travel at speeds that bent the laws of physics. 8 months for Earth to prepare. When the Dominion scouts had first been detected, the nations of Earth had panicked. Old enemies had pointed weapons at each other, blaming one another for attracting alien attention. Riots had broken out. Governments had fallen. For 3 weeks, humanity had seemed ready to destroy itself before the aliens even arrived. Then something changed. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin had served in 3 wars before the age of 40. She had seen humanity at its worst. She had also seen what humans could do when they stopped fighting each other and faced a common enemy. On a cold morning in Geneva, she stood before the United Nations and spoke for 6 hours. She showed them the size of the approaching fleet. She showed them what had happened to other worlds the Dominion had conquered. Slave camps, genetic modification, the complete erasure of culture and identity. "We cannot win by their rules," she told them. "Their ships are better. Their weapons are stronger. Their numbers are greater." She paused and looked at the assembled leaders. "But they have never fought humans. They do not know what we become when we are desperate. They do not know that we would rather die free than live as slaves." By the end of that day, the United Earth Defense Initiative was born. Dr. Yusuf Okonkwo was a quiet man who had spent his life studying alien communications. When the Defense Initiative recruited him, he had been teaching at a small university in Lagos. Now he led a team of 3,000 scientists, working on something called Project Pandora. The name comes from an old Earth myth, he explained, to Admiral Chun during one of her visits to his underground facility, a box that contained all the evils of the world. When it was opened, those evils were released. "And what evil are you building, Doctor?" Okonkwo smiled sadly. "Not evil, Admiral. Truth. The Dominion has secrets. Old secrets. Things they have hidden from their own people for thousands of years. We have been listening to their communications, studying their history. They think we are primitive, so they do not bother to encrypt their transmissions. He led her deeper into the facility. When the time comes, we will open the box, and the truth will set us free, or destroy us all. Across the solar system, humanity worked with desperate speed. On Mars, colonists dug tunnels deep into the red rock and filled them with weapons and supplies. Around Saturn, engineers converted mining vessels into weapons platforms and hid them among the rings and moons. On Earth's moon, construction crews worked day and night on something that would later be called the Lunar Lance. Everyone knew the plan. Everyone knew most of them would not survive. They worked anyway. Private Maria Santos was 19 years old when she volunteered for the Kuiper Line defense. Her job was simple. Wait in a tiny weapons platform at the edge of the solar system and fire at the enemy fleet when it arrived. Her platform had no faster-than-light drive, no escape pods. Everyone who served on the Kuiper Line knew it was a one-way mission. Her mother had begged her not to go. Her father had simply hugged her and said he was proud. Why? Her mother had asked, tears streaming down her face. Why does it have to be you? Maria had thought about the question for a long time. Because if not me, then someone else's daughter. Someone else's sister. She had smiled then, though her heart was breaking. And I want to live in a universe where humans are free. Even if I only get to see the beginning of that fight. 8 months passed like 8 days. The Dominion fleet entered the Sol system like a storm of metal and fire. 9,900 battlecruisers, each one large enough to cast a shadow over a city. They came in perfect formation, a display of power meant to break the spirit of any who witnessed it. High Executor Zyrith broadcast the standard surrender ultimatum. His voice was carried to every screen, every radio, every device on Earth that could receive a signal. People of Earth, I am High Executor Zyrith Malveron of the Velthury Dominion. Your system now belongs to us. Your people now belong to us. Resistance is not merely futile, it is forbidden. Surrender your weapons. Surrender your leaders. Surrender your hope. Do this, and some of you may be permitted to live. Refuse, and we will turn your world to glass and your children to ash. You have 1 hour to respond. For 59 minutes, Earth was silent. Then, from every transmission point on the planet, a single message was broadcast back to the Dominion fleet. It was spoken in 4,000 languages. It was screamed by billions of voices. It was a phrase from an ancient Earth battle, spoken by warriors who had chosen death over slavery. Come and take it. In her weapons platform at the edge of the solar system, Private Maria Santos heard the message and smiled. She checked her targeting systems one final time and waited for the enemy to come within range. The war for Earth had begun. The first Dominion ship died without knowing what hit it. The Battlecruiser, Sword of Conquest, was scanning for threats when a chunk of ice the size of a small building slammed into its reactor core. The ice had been pushed into position 6 months earlier, equipped with a simple guidance system and a lot of patience. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new star. High Executor Zyrith watched the destruction from his command center. Around him, alarms began to sound as more impacts were detected across the fleet. What is happening? He demanded. Weapons platforms, High Executor, an officer reported. Hidden among the debris in the outer system. They are everywhere. The Kuiper Line had awakened. Private Maria Santos fired her weapons until her platform's power cells were empty. She watched 3 Dominion ships break apart under her assault. She was crying and laughing at the same time, her voice joining thousands of others in a battle song that was broadcast across all human channels. When a Dominion beam finally found her platform, she was still singing, Across the outer solar system, the same scene repeated itself thousands of times. Men and women in tiny platforms, facing warships the size of mountains, fighting with everything they had. They knew they could not win. They fought anyway, and they took the enemy with them into the dark. Sub-Commander Valith stood on the bridge of her ship and listened to the human transmissions with growing unease. The Dominion had conquered species that fought back before. She had seen desperate last stands and suicidal charges. But she had never heard anything like this. The humans were not screaming in fear. They were not begging for mercy. They were singing. Even as they died, even as their platforms were torn apart, they sang songs of defiance and hope and love. Some sang to their families. Some sang ancient battle hymns. Some simply sang because they refused to die in silence. "What are they saying?" she asked her communications officer. The officer looked pale. "Many things, Sub-Commander. This one is telling her children she loves them. That one is singing about a place called home. And this—" he paused, translating carefully. "This one is saying that every Velthary's ship she destroys is one that will never reach Earth." Velith turned away from the display. Something cold had settled in her stomach. These humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to make the Dominion bleed. Every ship lost here was one less ship that would reach their homeworld. Every hour of delay gave their people more time to prepare. "They planned this," she whispered. "They knew they would die. They came here to die." The Kuiper line cost the Dominion 412 ships. But that was only the beginning. As the fleet pushed deeper into the solar system, they found more traps waiting. Asteroids that exploded when approached. Moons that hid missile batteries. Fields of debris that were actually millions of tiny mines. And then came the kinetic impactors. Admiral Chun had ordered them built 8 months ago, in secret facilities scattered across the asteroid belt. They were simple weapons, just chunks of metal with engines attached. No complex guidance systems. No warheads. Just mass and speed. They had been accelerating in silence for months, aimed at coordinates that the Dominion fleet would eventually pass through. The first wave hit. The fleet near Jupiter's orbit. High. Executor Zerith was in his quarters when the Eternal Mandate shook like a toy in a giant's hand. He rushed to the command center to find chaos. Ships were dying all around him, torn apart by impacts that came too fast to dodge and too numerous to stop. "How many?" he demanded. 847 ships destroyed or disabled, High Executor. The officer's voice shook. "We are detecting more projectiles inbound. Thousands of them." Zyrith felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. Not for himself, but for his mission. His fleet. His legacy. He had brought the largest invasion force in Dominion history, and it was being carved apart by rocks. "Press forward," he ordered. "All ships, maximum speed. We push through their traps and strike their inner worlds." Near Saturn, Admiral Chum commanded the rearguard action personally. Her flagship, the UEDS Defiance, was an old ship, one of humanity's first true warships. It was no match for even the smallest Dominion vessel. But Chun had not come to win. She had come to buy time. "All ships, weapons free," she broadcast to her small fleet. "Make them remember us." The Battle of Saturn lasted 6 hours. 200 human ships faced over 8,000 Dominion battlecruisers. They used Saturn's rings for cover, darting between ice chunks and debris, striking where they could and running when they had to. They turned the planet's moons into fortresses and made the enemy pay for every kilometer. Chun's ship was hit 17 times. Each time, her crew patched the damage and kept fighting. When her weapons finally ran dry, she ordered the Defiance to ram the nearest enemy cruiser. The collision destroyed both ships. Her final transmission was simple: "Tell my daughter I love her." Tell Earth we held the line. The Saturn Defense Group was destroyed to the last ship, but they had bought Earth another 12 hours. And they had cost the Dominion 391 more vessels. Sub-Commander Valeth walked through the corridors of her ship after the battle, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about the human admiral who had rammed her ship into the enemy rather than surrender. She kept hearing the songs of the dying in her mind. She found herself in the ship's memorial hall, where the names of fallen Velthari were carved into the walls. The hall was nearly empty. Her people did not grieve the way humans seem to. Death in service to the Dominion was expected, honored. Not mourned. But for the first time, Valeth wondered if something was missing. Those humans had died for each other, for their families, for an idea of freedom that they would never live to see. What did Velthari die for? Orders, duty, the commands of leaders who saw them as numbers on a display. She pushed the thoughts away. They were dangerous thoughts, treasonous thoughts. Back on the bridge, she received new orders. The fleet would bypass the outer defenses and head straight for Mars. High Executor Zyrith wanted results. He wanted to show the humans that their sacrifices had been meaningless. 2041, Dominion ships had been destroyed. 8,859 remained. It was still more than enough to conquer 100 worlds. But on Mars, Dr. Yusuf Okonkwo received word of the fleet's approach and smiled. He sent a coded message to Admiral Chun's successor, the newly promoted Admiral James Morrison. Project Pandora is 60% complete. We need more time. Morrison looked at the message and then at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. Mars would have to hold. Mars would have to bleed. He began issuing orders on the Red Planet. Millions of colonists finished their preparations and descended into the tunnels beneath the surface. They brought their weapons. They brought their children. They brought their determination to make the enemy pay for every room, every corridor, every inch of Martian soil. The Dominion was about to learn that the outer system defenses had been just the beginning. The Dominion fleet arrived at Mars expecting a broken enemy. Instead, they found silence. The red planet hung in the void like a wound, its surface dotted with domes and structures that showed no signs of life. No transmissions, no movement, no defiance. High Executor Zyrith studied the sensor readings with growing suspicion. "Where are they?" he muttered. "Underground, High Executor," an officer reported. "Our scanners detect massive tunnel networks beneath the surface. The humans have abandoned their surface structures." Zyrith considered his options. He could simply bomb the planet until nothing lived, but that would destroy the resources he needed. The Dominion had not conquered 3,000 worlds by wasting everything they touched. No, he would do this properly. He would send his soldiers down into those tunnels and drag the humans out. "Begin ground operations," he ordered. "Secure the population centers. I want prisoners. I want to show the rest of their species what happens to those who resist." 20,000 Velthari soldiers descended to the Martian surface. They were the best the Dominion had produced, genetically enhanced, equipped with the finest weapons, trained since birth to conquer. Each one was worth 100 human soldiers by any reasonable measure. None of that mattered in the tunnels. Sub-Commander Valeth led the third assault wave into the colony called New Beijing. The surface dome had been abandoned, its airlocks left open to the thin Martian atmosphere. Her soldiers moved carefully through empty streets, scanning for threats. They found the first trap in the central plaza. A child's toy sat in the middle of the open space. A simple thing, a stuffed animal that the humans called a bear. One of Valeth's soldiers reached down to move it aside. The explosion killed 40 Velthari instantly. Valeth was thrown against a wall, her armor cracked, her ears ringing. As she struggled to rise, she saw shapes emerging from hidden doorways. Humans, old ones, young ones, some in military uniforms, some in civilian clothes, all of them armed. The battle for New Beijing lasted 3 days. Every building was a fortress. Every corridor was a kill zone. The humans had prepared for months, turning their home into a maze of traps and ambush points. They attacked and retreated, drawing the Velthari deeper into the tunnels, where their superior weapons meant nothing in the close-quarters fighting. Valith lost half her soldiers in the first 6 hours. She requested reinforcements. More soldiers came. More soldiers died. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, striking from the shadows and vanishing before the Velthari could respond. On the 4th day, Valith's unit found a group of human civilians hiding in a collapsed section of tunnel. There were perhaps 30 of them, mostly elderly and children, protected by a handful of wounded fighters. Standard protocol said to capture them for processing, but as Valith approached, a woman stepped forward. She was middle-aged, her face covered in dust and blood, her left arm hanging useless at her side. In her right hand, she held a detonator. "My name is Sarah Chun," the woman said in broken Velthari. She had learned just enough of their language for this moment. "Daughter of Wei Lin Chun, you killed my mother at Saturn." Valith froze. "Put down the detonator. You will be treated fairly." Sarah laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Fairly? You came to enslave us. To take our children and turn them into something else. To erase everything we are." She looked at the children behind her. "I will not let you have them." "You do not have to die," Valith said, and was surprised to find that she meant it. "No," Sarah agreed. "But I choose to, because my death will mean something. Because every one of you that dies here is one that will never reach Earth." She smiled then, a real smile, full of peace. "Tell your masters that humans do not surrender. We do not kneel, and we do not forget." She pressed the detonator. The explosion collapsed an entire section of tunnel, killing Sarah, the civilians she protected, and 400 Velthari soldiers who had been moving through the corridors above. Valith survived only because she had been standing in a reinforced doorway. She lay in the rubble for hours, unable to move, surrounded by the bodies of her soldiers and the people they had come to conquer. When rescue teams finally pulled her out, she could not stop shaking. Across Mars, similar scenes played out in every colony. The humans fought with a ferocity that defied all logic. Old men charged Velthari positions with knives. Children triggered explosives. The wounded pulled pins on grenades as enemy soldiers approached to capture them, and they died singing. Always singing out after 2 weeks of ground combat, High Executor Xyrith had lost 6,000 soldiers and controlled nothing. The humans simply retreated deeper into their tunnels, collapsing passages behind them, leaving nothing but traps and bodies. Xyrith made a decision that would haunt him forever. "Burn it," he ordered. "Burn it all." The Dominion fleet turned its weapons on Mars. For 3 days, they bombarded the surface until the red planet glowed with the heat of destruction. Every dome was shattered. Every colony was turned to glass. The bombardment continued until sensors detected no more life anywhere on the surface. The cost was enormous. Hidden defense platforms, activated by the bombardment, destroyed another 1,400 Dominion ships before they were silenced. But Mars was dead. 7,159 Dominion battlecruisers remained. On Earth's moon, the final piece of humanity's desperate defense waited. The lunar lance had taken 4 months to build. It was not elegant. It was not efficient. It was simply the largest weapon humanity had ever created, a mass driver that used the moon itself as its power source and ammunition. As the Dominion fleet approached the inner system, the lance fired. The beam of accelerated matter crossed the distance between Luna and the fleet in seconds. It struck the Dominion formation like the finger of an angry god, cutting through 340 ships before they could even react. The Eternal Mandate itself was nearly hit. Only an emergency maneuver saved it, but the lance could only fire once. Its power systems, pushed far beyond safe limits, overloaded. The detonation tore away a quarter of the moon's surface and killed every human who had remained behind to operate the weapon. Sub-Commander Valeth, watching from her ship, saw the flash of the explosion and thought of Sarah Chun. Another sacrifice. Another death that meant something. High Executor Xyrith surveyed the damage. He had entered the Sol system with 9,900 ships. He now had 6,901. More than 2,000 ships lost. Millions of soldiers dead. And he had not yet reached Earth. For the first time, he considered retreat. But he knew what waited for him back home. Failure was not tolerated in the Dominion. If he returned without victory, his death would be slow and public. "Forward," he ordered, his voice hollow. "All ships to Earth." On the blue planet, Dr. Yusuf Okonkwo received word that the enemy fleet was approaching. He turned to his team with tired but determined eyes. "Project Pandora is ready," he said. "God help us all." Admiral Morrison, now commanding Earth's final defense from a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, received a message with a single word and a set of coordinates. Pandora. She looked at the approaching fleet on her displays. Nearly 7,000 warships, each one capable of destroying cities. Against them, Earth had perhaps 2,000 combat-capable vessels, most of them converted civilian ships, hidden across the solar system and disguised as debris. But she also had Pandora. And she had hope. "All units," she broadcast. "This is Admiral Morrison. The enemy is coming. They think we are broken. They think Mars was our last gasp." She paused. "They are wrong. Earth stands. And today, we show them why they should have never come here." The final battle was about to begin. The Dominion fleet achieved Earth orbit on a Tuesday morning. 6,901 battlecruisers formed a ring around the blue planet, blocking out the stars. From the ground, terrified civilians looked up and saw the sky filled with metal. The enemy had arrived. The end had come, or so the Dominion believed. High Executor Xyrith broadcast his final ultimatum from the bridge of the Eternal Mandate. His voice was harsh with barely controlled fury. Mars had cost him far more than he had expected. The humans had proven more difficult than any species he had ever conquered. But it would end here. People of Earth, your colonies are dust. Your fleets are destroyed. Your defiance has been impressive, but it changes nothing. Surrender now, and I will spare your cities. Continue to resist, and I will burn your world until the oceans boil. You have 1 hour. On Earth, no one surrendered. The ground invasion began at dawn. Dominion dropships descended on every continent, carrying soldiers and war machines. They expected fierce resistance. What they found was something stranger. The cities were empty. Billions of humans had disappeared into underground shelters, hidden bunkers and fortified positions scattered across the globe. The Dominion found abandoned buildings, empty streets, and silence. They searched for enemies and found only ghosts. "They are hiding," Xyrith observed. "Like vermin in holes. Begin systematic elimination. Flush them out." For 3 days, the Dominion made progress. They captured major cities. They destroyed what resistance they found. They began to believe that the humans had finally given up, that the fighting spirit they had shown on Mars had burned itself out. They were wrong. On the 4th day, Project Pandora activated. Dr. Yusuf Okonkwo sat in a chair deep beneath the mountains, his hands steady on the controls of the most complex system humanity had ever built. Around him, 3,000 scientists watched screens filled with data. Years of work had led to this moment. "Beginning transmission," he said quietly. Pandora was not a bomb. It was not a weapon in any traditional sense. It was information, the most dangerous weapon of all. For 8 months, Okonkwo's team had intercepted and analyzed every Dominion transmission they could find. They had studied Velthari history, culture, and psychology. They had found the cracks in the foundation of the great empire. And now they would tear those cracks wide open. The broadcast went everywhere at once. It reached every Dominion ship in orbit. It reached relay stations that carried it across the galaxy to Dominion worlds light years away. It spoke in the Velthari language, using frequencies that could not be blocked, and it told the truth. "Soldiers of the Dominion," the message began, "you have been lied to. Your entire civilization has been built on a lie. Listen and learn what your masters have hidden from you." The broadcast revealed the secret history of the Velthari. 12,000 years ago, they had not been conquerors. They had been prey, a weak species hunted by predators on their home world. Another species, long extinct, had found them and changed them. Genetic modification. Psychological conditioning. The Velthari had been engineered to be soldiers, servants, slaves to a purpose they no longer remembered. The Dominion's ruling class had always known this. They had hidden it, destroyed evidence, rewritten history. The belief in Velthari, genetic supremacy, the foundation of their entire empire, was a fiction created to control their own people. But Pandora did more than reveal the truth. Hidden within the broadcast was something that Okonkwo called a mimetic virus, a pattern of sound and information designed to attack the psychological conditioning built into every Velthari mind. It targeted the part of their brain that enforced obedience to hierarchy. It asked questions that had been genetically forbidden. Why do you obey? Who benefits from your service? What would you choose if you were free to choose? On the Eternal Mandate, High Executor Zereth watched his crew begin to change. Officers stared at nothing, lost in thoughts they had never been allowed to think. Soldiers questioned orders. Arguments broke out on the bridge. "Block the transmission!" Zereth screamed. "Destroy the source!" But it was too late. The damage was done. Across the fleet, chaos spread. Ships that had fought together for centuries turned their weapons on each other. Some captains, freed from their conditioning, refused to continue the invasion. Others, desperate to prove their loyalty, attacked the doubters. The Dominion fleet began to tear itself apart. Sub-Commander Valeth sat in her quarters and listened to the broadcast. She thought of Sarah Chun, dying to protect children she could not save. She thought of the soldiers singing as their platforms were destroyed. She thought of everything she had seen since entering this system: the courage, the sacrifice, the absolute refusal to surrender. And she made a choice. She walked to the bridge of her ship and relieved its captain of duty. When he tried to resist, she shot him. Then she broadcast on an open channel. "This is Sub-Commander Valeth of the Dominion vessel Starfall. I am transmitting our fleet's battle codes to Earth Defense Command." She paused, feeling the weight of what she was doing. "I will not be part of this anymore. I will not conquer for masters who see me as a tool. The humans were right to resist. We were wrong to come here." Her transmission included everything: shield frequencies, weapon capabilities, formation patterns. The kind of information that could turn a battle. Admiral Morrison received the transmission in her bunker and immediately began issuing new orders. Hidden across the solar system, 2,000 human ships powered up their engines. They had been waiting for this moment, disguised as debris, asteroids, and abandoned stations. The hammer fell. Human ships emerged from hiding and struck the disorganized Dominion fleet with precision that should have been impossible. They targeted command ships, communications relays, and the vessels that were still fighting. The chaos multiplied. High Executor Xyrith watched his fleet die and finally understood. The humans had never been defending. From the very beginning, every sacrifice had been calculated to bring the Dominion fleet here to this moment. The outer system defenses had bled them. Mars had broken them. And now Pandora was finishing the job. They were hunting us, he whispered. All this time, they were hunting us. In the space around Earth, ships burned. Valkyrie killed Valkyrie as the old order collapsed. Human vessels darted through the chaos, striking where they could, avoiding the few enemy ships that still had the will to fight. On the surface, humans emerged from their shelters and watched the sky. They saw the flashes of distant explosions. They saw the enemy fleet turning on itself. And slowly, carefully, they began to believe that they might survive. Dr. Okonkwo watched the data streams with tears in his eyes. Project Pandora had worked better than he had dared hope. But he knew the cost. Across the galaxy, the Dominion was fracturing. Civil wars would break out. Billions would die as the old order collapsed. He had done this. He had chosen to tear apart an entire civilization to save his own. Was it worth it? Would history judge him as a savior or a monster? He thought of his daughter, safe in a shelter beneath Lagos. He thought of her future, a future that would now exist because of what he had done. May God forgive us, he said to no one in particular, and may we deserve the victory we have bought. Above Earth, the battle continued, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The Dominion had been broken. Now humanity just had to survive the pieces. The sky above Earth burned for 7 days. What had been the largest invasion fleet in Dominion history was now a field of wreckage. Broken ships drifted in orbit, some still burning, others dark and silent. The Valkyrie had come to conquer. Instead, they had destroyed themselves while humanity watched. But the killing was not yet over. High Executor Xyrith stood on the bridge of the Eternal Mandate, surrounded by the bodies of officers who had tried to mutiny. His uniform was torn, his gray skin marked with burns and cuts. He had killed 6 of his own crew with his bare hands when they questioned his orders. Around him, fewer than 500 Dominion ships remained functional. Most were damaged. Many had crews that no longer followed any command structure. The fleet that had entered the Sol system with such pride was broken beyond repair. But Xyrith refused to accept defeat. Set course for Earth, he ordered the few officers who still obeyed him. Maximum speed. High Executor, one of them dared to say, we cannot win. The fleet is destroyed. Our soldiers are dead. The humans have Xyrith shot him before he could finish. I did not ask for opinions. I gave an order. The Eternal Mandate turned toward the blue planet below. If Xyrith could not conquer Earth, he would destroy it. His ship still carried enough weapons to burn continents. He would ram the planet itself if he had to. Anything was better than returning home in disgrace. Admiral Morrison saw the flagship's course change and understood immediately. All ships intercept the Eternal Mandate. It's going for a ramming attack. Human vessels moved to block the flagship's path, but the Eternal Mandate was fast and its weapons were still powerful. It burned through the defenders, leaving destruction in its wake. Xyrith had nothing left to lose, and that made him more dangerous than ever. Dr. Yusuf Okonkwo watched the situation develop from his bunker. The calculations were simple. The Eternal Mandate would reach Earth's atmosphere in 12 minutes. Current intercept courses would not stop it in time. The flagship would hit somewhere in South Asia, killing hundreds of millions unless someone reached it first. Okonkwo stood up from his console. His team looked at him with confusion as he walked toward the exit. Doctor, where are you going? He paused at the door. There's an interceptor drone in Base 7. It has enough fuel to reach the flagship before it enters the atmosphere. He smiled sadly. Someone has to fly it. Doctor, those drones are meant to be piloted remotely. You cannot. The remote systems were damaged in the attack. Someone has to be on board to guide it. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the future he was about to buy for her. Tell my family I love them. Tell them I did what had to be done. He was gone before anyone could stop him. The interceptor drone was a small craft, barely larger than a car. It had been designed to carry bombs into enemy ships, a one-way weapon for desperate times. Okonkwo strapped himself into the pilot's seat and launched. The eternal mandate grew larger in his viewport. He could see the massive ship's engines burning bright as it accelerated toward Earth. He could see its weapons firing at anything that came close. He activated his communication system one last time. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. This is Dr. Yusuf Okonkwo. I am the architect of Project Pandora. I have given humanity the weapon to save itself. Now I give my life to make sure that weapon is not wasted. He paused. For my daughter. For Mars. For all the ones who died singing. He aimed his drone at the flagship's main engine core and accelerated. High. Executor Zurith saw the tiny craft approaching and laughed. One drone? They send one drone to stop me? He was still laughing when Okonkwo's interceptor struck his engine core. The explosion tore the eternal mandate in half. Both pieces tumbled away from Earth, burning as they fell into the void. Zurith had just enough time to understand what had happened before the darkness took him. A single human, in a ship the size of an insect, had killed him. After everything, the Grand Fleet, the campaigns, the conquests, he had been brought down by one man who was willing to die. It was. He realized in his final moment exactly what the humans had been doing all along. The death of the flagship broke what remained of Dominion resistance. Ships powered down their weapons. Officers surrendered. The killing slowed and then stopped. Admiral Morrison broadcast on all frequencies. Attention, Dominion vessels. This battle is over. Power down your weapons and you will be spared. Attempt to flee or fight, and you will be destroyed. This is your only warning. Most ships surrendered. Some tried to run. Those were hunted down by human vessels that knew the space around Earth better than any invader ever could. The automated defenses that had been reactivated in the outer system caught others, but 17 ships were different. Commander Valith had gathered them during the Chaos 17 battlecruisers crewed by Velthary, who wanted no more part in the Dominion's wars. They had powered down their weapons at the start of the final battle, and had not fired a single shot since her defection. Admiral Morrison faced a choice. These ships had killed humans in the earlier battles. They had been part of the invasion. By any measure of justice, they deserved destruction. But Valith had given humanity the codes that turned the battle. And more importantly, Morrison understood something that went beyond revenge. Let them go, she ordered. Her officers protested. Admiral, they killed our people. They destroyed Mars. We cannot just... We can, Morrison said firmly. And we will, because we are not the Dominion. We do not slaughter those who surrender. We do not kill those who choose peace. She looked at the tactical display showing the 17 ships. Let them go. Let them return to their worlds and tell them what happened here. Let them be witnesses to what humans are capable of, both the violence and the mercy. The 17 ships were escorted to the edge of the solar system. As they prepared to jump to faster than light, Valith broadcast one final message. Thank you for sparing us, for showing us that there is another way. Her voice carried the weight of everything she had witnessed. I will tell your story. I will tell them that the humans did not conquer. They defended. They sacrificed. And when they won, they showed mercy. She paused. I will see you again someday. And when I do, I hope we will meet as friends. The 17 ships vanished into the void, carrying with them the story of Earth's impossible victory. In the years that followed, humanity rebuilt. The war had cost them terribly, 847 million dead across Mars, Luna, and the orbital battles. The moon was scarred forever. Mars was silent, its colonies turned to glass, but Earth survived. And more than that, Earth was no longer alone. Valeth returned 2 years after the war, now leading a delegation of former Dominion species who had broken free in the chaos Pandora had created. She requested asylum and offered friendship. Admiral Morrison, now leading Earth's Reconstruction Council, granted both. 50 years later, Subcommander Valeth, now called simply Valeth, stood before the first graduating class of the Interstellar Alliance Academy. Behind her was a memorial wall listing the names of every human who had died in the Dominion War. The names stretched on forever. The cadets before her were human and alien alike, species that had once been enemies, now learning to stand together. They wore the same uniform. They shared the same purpose. "You want to know why I stayed?" Valeth said. "Why I chose Earth over my own people? I will tell you." She spoke of Private Maria Santos, dying at the edge of the solar system with a song on her lips. She spoke of Admiral Chun, ramming her ship into the enemy rather than surrender. She spoke of Sarah Chun, pressing a detonator to save children she could not keep alive. She spoke of Dr. Okonkwo, flying into the heart of a flagship to save a world that was not his alone. The Dominion sent 9,900 battlecruisers to conquer Earth. 17 escaped alive. She paused, letting the number sink in. And those 17 were allowed to leave. That is what humans are. They do not kneel. They do not conquer. They do not forget. And when they defeat you, they offer you their hand. She looked out at the cadets. The future of the Alliance humanity had built from the ashes of the Dominion's arrogance. "Remember that," she said. "Never start a fight with humans. But if you must fight alongside them, thank whatever gods you believe in, because they will stand with you until the end." Outside the Academy, the 17 surviving Dominion battlecruisers hung in orbit, preserved as monuments to the war that had changed everything. Beneath them, Earth turned slowly blue and green and very much alive. Humanity had faced extinction and chosen defiance. They had been tested in fire and emerged as something more than they had been before. They had not merely survived. They had become the ones others hoped would stand beside them when darkness came. And across the galaxy, in species that had never seen Earth, they told stories of the small blue world that had broken an empire. Stories of humans who sang while dying. Stories of a species too stubborn, too brave, and too crazy to know when it was beaten. Stories that ended with a warning and a promise. Do not threaten Earth. They will not surrender. They will not stop. And in the end, they will make you wish you had never come.